Hey everyone, and thanks for joining me for another great conversation. As always, I appreciate you guys. My next guest is a specialist in autism, and she's an author of autism books and goes by the pen name of S.J. Childs. She's an incredible individual to talk to. This conversation is near and dear to my heart because my youngest son is autistic, and my wife and I constantly have to deal with the challenges, but can also see the beautiful side of what autism is. I introduce to you guys the extremely passionate Sara Bradford. One, two, and three. Hey, Sara, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show. I really, really appreciate your time.
So glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to be a great conversation, one that seems to be near and dear to both of our hearts. And I'm super excited to have it. But before we get into all that, can you please let the listeners know about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I'm a mother of three. I am a children's book author and an autism advocate. I do a lot of speaking on autism. I run an autism advocates group on Facebook just for supporting parents and families. And yeah, I like to do poetry and I love to sing.
That's awesome. Yeah, autism is why I was super excited about this conversation. I have a 7-year-old now son that's autistic, and he's incredible. The more and more I get to learn about him, and the more and more I get to learn about what I call strengths. Some may call them weaknesses. I call them strengths. I'm super enthused by him, and I know that's kind of biased for a parent to say because you're supposed to be excited about your kid. But I think autism has definitely, brought something different, like a little bit of a sauce to our relationship, and I really enjoy it. So what was that?
I like that. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like to say it in that way because a lot of people think that this is, or people that are not informed would think that this is actually an actual weakness, and I kind of call it a superpower, right? Where I kind of envy it sometimes because my son seems to have an extreme focus on what he wants to do and not be distracted by anything else. And I wish I had that sometimes. So, what's your experience with autism?
Oh, yeah, I have a lot of that. So tell you where I got started was
Okay,
10 years ago.
okay,
My son is now 11. He was diagnosed when he was 16 months. So quite early on. And I just didn't know anything about autism at the time. And I'm sure, kind of like you, when you get a diagnosis for your child, it's a little earth shattering. You have these expectations of what parenting will be like. And he was our first child.
yeah,
I did raise a stepdaughter. So, I mean, she was our technically first child, but for us as a couple, we had a lot of expectations. And so those were something that had to be reformulated and relooked at. And as I like to think, I hate the word disorder, like autism spectrum disorder. And I love, just like you, I have the outlook. It's a reorder of thinking. The
yeah,
reordered thinking process is absolutely beautiful to be able to take the information that the way they process it. It's so unlike us who don't have those abilities. And so I agree that they are just, it's these beautiful strengths that lie within chaos. And yeah, I think it's amazing. So early on, I did a lot of research on autism and just got as much information as I could, not knowing anything, and just spent like 2 years really researching and looking for programs and support. And he was nonverbal until he was 4. And today he's 11 and he is just talking all the time.
yeah.
And
Yeah, awesome.
so it's incredible to see those, you know, when they tell you at 16 months, well, he'll be probably be nonverbal. He might not ever speak. He might, not ever do these things that you're expecting. And you really take those things and either suffer with them, right? And
Okay.
learn and go that route, or you take what all the positive things you can find in the situation and you run with those, and then all of these other wonderful growths and like flowers bloom along the way. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been an amazing experience. But in the last 5 years, I've also come to know that my husband is also on the spectrum, and he has Asperger's. My oldest daughter that I had spoke of, my stepdaughter, I'm all 99.999% certain that she's on the spectrum. And our little one, we have another daughter who is 9, and she is also going to be tested soon. And I girls, they present in such a different way than boys.
In
Boys
what
have like
ways?
um they early on learn how to mimic adult behaviors much better than boys do, where they can mask their behaviors and almost go unnoticed.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, in our daughter's case, she was verbal. I mean, right away,
Yeah.
9 months old, just saying everything, asking everybody. Um, and uh, but by the time now that she's 9, in the last 2 years of school, 1st and 2nd grade, I was starting to notice, okay, well, she might be dyslexic. And I was asking for help for the schools. Can you help? Will you please get her support? And they were saying, oh, no, she's fine. She's
Yeah.
only in 1st or 2nd grade. She's going to catch up with the rest. Like, she's so smart. She's so brilliant. She's so emotionally mature. There's no problem. Huh, guess what? When we brought her home from homeschool, and this year, being uh, home, I've seen exactly that she is dyslexic, and she's writing backwards, she's reading backwards, and she's struggling. And so right away I said, we're getting her help. So we got her a tutor, and now she's really coming far ahead. So it just really goes
Awesome.
to show that the importance of giving children support, no matter the severity
Right.
that a teacher or a school places on a cookie cutter design. It's not the case. Like,
Yeah.
kids need support in the areas they do. So, with that being said, her father is also dyslexic. And so it kind of wraps up my little family. And yeah, I kind of joke that I'm the only one without autism in this family.
Yeah.
Where
That's
do
awesome.
I fit in the spectrum, you know?
Yeah, I'm sure you fit in perfectly well with the family, and they could care, less if you're autistic or not. But that's funny.
Like,
I do want to go back to the diagnosis of your son and your first time going through this, because you kind of brought me back to when my son was first diagnosed, and it was about a year and a half, but I think that was more our delay than it was anything else. But what gave you the signs for you to try to go get tested or to try to figure this out? What was it? What was symptoms was he showing?
yeah, for us, we were seeing like this perfect baby that never made a noise, that was just sweet and quiet. But the pediatrician disagreed that that was a wonderful thing, and that he should be making certain vowel sounds,
Okay.
pointing to things, making more of an effort, I guess not an effort, but interacting more with us
Okay.
in behaviors and eye contact.
Yeah.
uh, when you like I said, when you've never held your own baby in your arms and you don't know all of these things, it's such a learning experience now
Yeah.
to look and to see, kind of where it was at and where it was presenting itself. So,
Okay.
um, of course, right away, as we realized, like, he would hum all the time, flap his arms, spin circles. He just had really severe behaviors as a toddler.
Okay.
And right away, I started, obviously, if you don't know anyone, it's kind of like your crutch to lean on when you find someone to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to do that in an ex family member.
Hmm.
And it was so nice because I was able to kind of breathe and realize, okay, this is okay. I'm gonna be okay. I'm just gonna take some advice and run with it. And so we started diet changes really early on, like 4 years old,
Okay.
and we removed all of the casein, which is a protein in milk, and gluten, which is the protein in wheat.
Okay.
And through that, saw progress in our child. And of course, it's individual to everyone. Everybody on the planet, nobody has the same medical case management.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so But gluten and dairy made huge differences. Like I said, DJ's my son's name. He hadn't said anything. He didn't really, he made humming noises, but he didn't make word. He didn't know
Yep.
words or anything.
Yep.
And so at 4, soon after we took that casein out, he started talking. And prior to that, I researched, I used to be a medical professional,
Yep.
a medical paralegal. And so I did a lot of research on, what are these changes? Why are these changes going to happen? What makes a difference? And it was that from my research, I was finding that the neural paths were being inflamed by the casein,
Okay.
and they're
Wow.
not being able to make the connections, and him not being able to say words. Well, I have to back up a little bit and tell you something that is really cool. When he was 1 year old, no, 1 month old rather, um, I had started the Your Baby Could Read program,
Okay.
and a bunch of DVDs and flashcards that you show your baby. They used to have commercials for them all the time, but
I think I
I was
remember
10.
that. Yeah. I've seen
And
similar. Yeah.
why not, right? Give it a
Yeah.
try. Like,
Sure.
big on early education. And
Yeah.
so I did it, and by the age of 1, he was tracking the words with his eyes completely. He was reading.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
when it would say, like, "arms up," he'd put his arms up. When it'd say "clap," he'd clap. Again, he wasn't verbal, but he was communicating with me through the reading of these cards and sign language. We were kinda tried to do everything at the beginning. Um, and then by the age of 2, still we hadn't done the diet changes and he wasn't talking, but he started writing. And
Oh
he
wow.
started writing like turtle, dinosaur, elevator,
The full
like not
words. Yeah.
ABCs, yeah, but he was just writing straight words.
Awesome.
And so I started communicating with him in written charts.
Okay.
And here are your wants and needs. Like, do you want, chips or cook whatever? Do you need a bottle? Whatever
Yeah.
they were. And so he was starting to be able to communicate with us, which, as you know, it's so it's such a, like a bridge to gap that,
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah.
communication here with anybody.
Right.
And so it was so neat to have that, to be able to gain a relationship with him through that. But like I said, it wasn't until the case in that he, in that first week, said 50 words at least. He
Wow.
just exploded
Yeah.
with all words. It was amazing. And we waited about 6 weeks until we removed the gluten. And when we removed the gluten, almost all the stimming behavior stopped. The
Okay.
spinning, the humming, the flapping of the arms, better eye contact. It was incredible. And so, again, in my research on the gluten, I had found that, as a lot of people know, it was causing gut inflammation, which was then making him feel awkward in his physical body, which would then make him want to spin, get rid of it, or
Yeah.
push himself up against things to kind of compress on it.
Yeah.
And just all of these interesting things that
Yeah.
you think are just, you don't know, so you don't know. They're
And
just
they're
strange.
frustrated. Yeah. 'Cause
Yeah,
they can't tell you what it is that's wrong.
exactly. And they're just communicating with their bodies. And
Yeah.
so it was incredible to kind of get on top of that. I feel like, and overcome those struggles that we were
Yeah.
having. And so that was pretty incredible. And then at about age 3, still before he didn't start talking, we came home one day and he started writing things down that he'd seen in the world. So, like 7-Eleven. Oh, thank heaven,
Oh, good
7-Eleven.
for him. Yeah.
License plate numbers and
Yeah.
street names, these incredible things. So then we realized he had a photographic memory and an auditory memory. So I just
Yeah.
started teaching him everything I could possibly teach him.
Yeah, that is super cool. It makes me think of my son a lot. My son does he likes like company logos, right? So he likes to go to YouTube and cycle through like Honda and Sony and Panasonic, and he could pick these things out and he's really good about them. But I'm really intrigued with the casein and the gluten removal because he speaks but only when prompted. My son does. So he's still pretty much nonverbal. He's able to get the basics out, and that's good enough for us because as long as you can communicate your frustrations, it's great. But I'm super intrigued at now trying to pull those things from his diet because we kind of just let him go on what he wants because he's such a picky eater.
Oh,
So he's a big dairy guy too. So,
oh, dang it. We had to find a lot of dairy-free choices. So I
okay.
can give you great brands. Obviously, we've been doing it for 7 years now, 6 or 7 years. So
Yeah.
way before it was even like a popular thing. So now it's actually good.
Right.
Now they're
Yeah.
on board and they're getting flavors. So yeah, it was adjusting. But I think the most important thing is consistency because
Okay.
I think when you try it and you're like, oh, it's so hard to not do this because they don't want to. Well, then you're setting yourself up for failure if you
Sure.
can't do a plan and try to like at least get a goal to measure so
Yeah.
that you can see if you've succeeded or not. So
Gotcha. I'm gonna give that
yeah.
a shot for sure. How much of did you? It sounds like you were very hands on and are still very hands on. How much did you, for lack of the word, outsource the therapy or do how much of it yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, both, tons of both.
Okay.
Going back, my husband is, like I said, now that we know, he also has Asperger's. We didn't know that though in the beginning,
Okay.
but he has a sister with Down syndrome, and so he grew up in supporting a special needs, individual sibling, and so he just has a lot of compassion and like patience and just understanding
Sure.
of people's kind of like how I don't know their what they need it through their body language rather than what they're really saying.
Yeah.
And so he was really able to be so good at helping early on like that. We did get early intervention, which is so important. And the thing that parents need to understand is that when you get a company or a therapist and they come in, not every therapist is going to be the perfect person. We cycled through three or four before that perfect therapist was there to kind of really guide us in the right directions
Right.
because we got to had wasn't working and it was our son would just get frustrated every time she would come and she was always trying to force like animals on him and little barn animals and he wanted numbers and
Yeah.
he wanted the facts like he didn't want to mess with animals and it's like the silliest things but in that I was just like okay, this isn't working. He's just sad every time she comes, and we got this new lady that came in and she changed our lives. Not only did she help him and you could see the progress he was making, but she turned around and she said to us, now here's what you can do. Here's the steps you need to take at home, because nobody had done that yet.
Yeah.
Nobody had said this is what you need to do. And they were the simplest things. Ready, set, go. Start there.
Okay.
Start by playing ready, set, go with
Wh-
when we first get a diagnosis.
And how do we do ready
Um,
set go? How does that work?
we would basically, we have kind of a long hallway. And so we would say ready, set, go. And then we would race down the hallway,
Okay.
or give each other fives or just do kind of but the excitement of doing like the ready and then set. And then it's like this build up.
Yeah.
And then finally, he would just be like, "Go,"
Yeah.
and it was kind of his first like wanting to interact and to be a part of this exciting thing. And it was what gave us that look into it to say, okay, we need to enter things from his perspective rather than from ours. And that is something that's tricky, that takes time and effort and another commitment, a lot of
Yeah.
commitment.
Definitely.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we had to teach ourselves. Our son didn't right away, we knew didn't respond well to no, don't,
Yeah.
stop, can't do that.
Yeah.
Those didn't go well at our house. So we had to, change them to, hey, let's do this. Hey, come on over here. And just kind of really switch it up and make it all about positive interactions rather than any kind of negativeness. And not that we're not negative anyways, but
Sure.
you have to say no to your kid every once in a while.
Absolutely.
But
Boundaries.
yeah, but it would throw him into these huge meltdowns. So we just needed to reorganize the way we said no. We didn't, because you don't have to kind of stick to old traditional principles when it comes to autism.
Right.
Those things out the window. And yeah,
Yeah.
completely out the window.
Yeah. I was second with on the therapist because we also went through a few different therapists, and my son wasn't responding. Likewise, he was kind of he's actually stagnant for a little while until we decided to take affirmative action and basically, get it switched. So we hit or miss about three to four, but the fourth one wasn't as good as yours and didn't give us any information. But my son was so close with, and you can tell that they had a bond, sort of like a big brother bond, and my son would respond. He would be able to calm him down whenever my son needed to get out the car after school and things like that. So I do agree with you 1,000%. It takes a unique person to be able to
Yeah.
kind of make a connection and make it easier for them, for sure.
And I just a side question, how
Sure.
many, this doesn't even matter, I'm sure. How many female therapists versus male therapists did you have?
Three females, two males, and he was close with one female at the end, but the person I'm talking to was a male. Yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like my son too. He made great connections with a couple of the female therapists.
yeah,
There was one guy that at the pandemic, we just had to say, sorry, we can't do this anymore.
sure.
But he was close to him and he had like, it's amazing the relationships that you can watch them start to create because you don't know that they can. And
Yeah,
you don't have that experience of watching them do these things. So those first times are just like, oh, they're heart melting, aren't they?
yeah, extremely. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes they're happy and sometimes they're sad, but they're beautiful either way. So how do you feel the state of society is when it comes to treating autism, right? Because I read a book by Paul Collins called Not Even Wrong. And basically what Paul Collins did is he had a newly diagnosed son, and then he's a journalist, so he goes kind of through the history of autism, like way back medieval times, things like that. And the history has never really been friendly to the autist. For the most part, they were considered just these outcasts, these lunatics, and stuff like that. So, do you think now in current day 2020, we've actually gotten to the point where people are understanding this, or do you think it's one of those where they'll never get it? The average person, I
uh,
mean.
they don't have a choice. They don't have a choice with numbers 1 in 54, and it's risen like 750% since the 1970s.
Wow.
What choice do they have? They
Right.
have no choice. Right. There's you either get to knowing or you're going to be finding out soon enough because that's 1 out of 11 boys or something, and I'm not quite sure the number on girls, but it's crazy. And
Yeah.
it's so yeah, I think that no, the world doesn't get to just sit back and let it happen
Yeah.
because it's gonna be one on, one and one
Yeah.
someday. And then you're gonna have to know how to do it because it's gonna be 50% of the population.
Yeah.
So,
Gotcha. Yeah.
what can we do? Like I love that you and I are, being a voice and giving people what they don't have is the knowledge. And so they enter and walk through with all of this fear of not knowing. They don't know it's even fear, really. But when they're, when they come across something that they don't know about, then they're afraid. They don't know how to react. They don't know. But when you give them the knowledge, when you prepare people and you say, hey, this is the case, then they have the choice.
Yeah.
They at least have choice whether I'm going to be compassionate, be understanding, or just be not be, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
So it's really interesting. Um, this last Halloween, this is a great little story. This last Halloween, I guess 2 Halloweens ago, um, always going trick or treating has always been tricky for us. And I don't know if you've had the same problems, but we get up there and our son sees an open door. He wants to go in because, hey, these people are opening their door for me. Like I'm taking a trip, and he's
Yeah.
so always like this intrusive, like, wait, he's not meaning to. And it was like always making excuses for him.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, he's not taking candy, or sorry. And I was like, okay, I am done apologizing for my fabulous, fabulous son. Like, if people can't get on board with this, then yeah. So what I did was, he was Garfield for that year. And
Okay.
so I stuck a big sticker on him that said, I have autism. Please be patient. And, I understand that putting a label on a child, some people aren't going to like that idea. That's
Yeah.
fine. What it gave my neighbors was the knowledge that they needed to act appropriately. And guess what they did? Just that.
Yeah.
They got down on his level. They were understanding and patient and so kind. Now we have even twice as many friends in the neighborhood because they understand, like, not only did we come to them and say, hey, here's what we're dealing with, so be understanding for us. They were able to then be like, okay, now this is the kid that tried to come in last year or asked me for my car keys so that he could check out whatever engine part,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Right.
yeah, now they're like, okay, okay. And I think it made a huge difference and a huge impact on our community.
Yeah, super cool. I think we did the well, I know we did around here it was the word got around like the local newspapers and stuff where any kid that would have like the blue basket would basically
Oh
be
yeah.
like the tell sign or
The tell
whatever.
sign or whatever.
And I thought that worked
And
out
I
really
thought
good.
that was like,
But
Yeah.
yeah, Halloween hasn't been
yeah,
that bad besides him trying to grab more than one candy. He listens pretty well, but he definitely got a little greedy there most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, what kid does?
Yeah, exactly. Even me, I'm over here looking like, can I get one of these? So,
Too funny.
so you have all this information amassed, right? You went through all this. When did you decide that it's time for me to share this stuff with the world?
Well, I guess bits and pieces. Like, when my son was in school, I would do like a parent liaison, where I would be kind of the in between for parents, for special needs parents, if they had problems or questions, that they could come and try to find resources. Going back to being a paralegal, like, resources and finding things, that's my jam. So I'm just really comes naturally to me. I yeah, and I understand that some people struggle with that. And so why not be able to share that easily thing that comes easy to me with everyone who deserves and needs that.
Yeah.
Um so I kind of just started that slowly. And then, I my books,
Right.
I did write two books about autism, but they were kind of second a second thought of actually where the books began.
Okay.
Um,
What do you mean?
I know me and both of my little ones. We have a physical difference, and so we have little ears. And so when I was growing up, I was always teased and always, called people called me little ears for years, and even
Yikes.
into adulthood, I ran into someone and they were like, "Oh, little ears," and I'm like, "Oh, you know, 30, you don't need to say that,"
Yeah.
but whatever. And so,
Jeez.
yeah, when my children were both born with the same heredity, it doesn't affect our hearing or anything. It's just called outer ear microtia. And we just have, like, they look like little doll ears. They're just really cute. Um, but you know, when my daughter, I wasn't as concerned with my son because him in his with his autism, he has the lack of judgment
Okay.
and lack of kind of danger and self-awareness. And
Yeah.
so he's never shown, like, hurt feelings from someone's opinion or things like that. Like, he doesn't express himself that way. He doesn't, gain information that way.
Right.
But my daughter, on the other hand, she's very sensitive, and she's, goes out into the world and people can hurt her feelings and it
Yeah.
affects her. And so I wanted to do something special for her, to just show her that it didn't matter how different she was, that she just needed to be proud of who she was, be proud of herself. That would be, be kind to people. That would be how people would look at her in the world, not for the differences that she had. And I can kind of compared it. Well, the characters are cats. How
Okay.
many cats do you know that look the same?
Yeah,
Or
a ton of them, but not too many either.
no, they
Yeah. Yeah.
don't. They're all different. They
Mhm.
all have unique different parts and pieces and, colors and every spots and everything. So
True. Good
it's
point.
a good way for kids to kind of recognize that all these species out there, they all have differences, and that nobody's, nobody needs to be down on themselves for those. So
Right.
yeah, so that's kind of where it started. And then it was kind of just a hobby, and people said these are really cute. They're very sing song, they're rhymey, which is, great for kids for learning how to read. Repetition with words and the syllables and things are really good for learning how to read in patterns.
Okay.
And that helps with reading for kids. And so that's kind of the style that I write in. And then after that, I decided, exactly like you said, well, how can I get my word out there even more? Write
Right.
an autism book. And so
Yeah.
autism book is, the characters are bears. And at the beginning of the book, I really wanted to show, like, nobody understood what autism was. And for us, it looked like he just didn't want to be a part of things. And so for us, it was like, he's just kind of grouchy and grumbly and, it, not wanting to be a part of things. And so this bear character was perfect for him, because it kind of showed that rough side and that kind of side that just didn't want to be bothered and stuff. And wanted to just do his own thing in his own little cave, and
Yeah.
not be bothered by other things. But, once we learn to support and him in his way, then it opens up a whole new world of being able to communicate with him, to build relationships with him. So yeah.
That's super cool. Yeah. So I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit about your writing process, because I also am trying to self-publish a book, not on autism, but just writer in general. Do you have the whole story in your head ahead of time? Do you kind of chip away and put your butt in the chair every day? How's your process for writing?
Okay, so a lot of these books, I have 7 published books now. I have 5 more to go that I've already started and written.
Nice.
For me, when I sat down, because it's poetry, it flows like this.
Okay.
Like, I sit down and I write a book and it's done in 5 or 10 minutes. And of
Nice.
course, I tweak it and, edit and mess with it here and there, but it's pretty much like one and done. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I love
so
that.
yeah, and I think it just comes with, kind of like I just tap in, and when
Yeah.
I get it, and whether I usually do it in writing. I'm usually like still the pen writer who likes to write out all my notes and things like that.
Yeah.
I haven't converted, my voice text thinks that I live between Mississippi and like Maine. I live in Utah, but it doesn't ever say anything right. So I can't.
Yeah. That's funny.
And so I just say, okay, I gotta write things down.
Yeah.
Um,
Are you superstitious? Like it's same hour, early morning? Do you do any of those?
I don't put my purse on the ground for fear of losing money. That's the only superstition I have.
I've never heard that one before. That's a good one.
It's from Africa. Isn't that interesting? Yeah,
Oh, give me
I from
more. Where'd you get that? I never heard that.
from a friend who, I couldn't tell you where she was at, unfortunately.
Sure.
It was like 12 or 13 years ago. But she just had told me, and girl, if you leave your purse on the floor, that's bad luck. That's losing your money. So I was like, never doing that again.
Gotcha. I love it. Now, for anybody that's listening or me that's trying to get into self-publishing, is there any newbie advice you would give going in that maybe we can't see?
I would say just get as much free information, obviously, as you can. Watch the YouTube videos, the how to self-publish my book. Go into whatever platform you choose. I chose KDP through Amazon so
Okay.
that I could publish everything on Amazon and have it, monetized there. Um, and so if they have great guidelines, you just kind of print out the guideline book or read it online or whatever. And I guess the biggest thing, my biggest struggle was formatting. Learning just really going in there and getting, your exact measurements, your exact formatting specifications, and kind of learning how to do those first rather than last when everything's done. And then it's like, I think I just banged my head on the computer, before I like, help me.
So how'd you fix it?
So I got a friend who
Okay.
did a lot, worked at Adobe. So,
You went for
hey,
the big guns.
how do I put these numbers in? I don't know numbers. I can math. That was as good as I was in math, was
Yeah.
doing it by I'm the family, not the numbers lady.
And I mean, I know you're doing podcasts such as this one and stuff, but how's the marketing for your books going? Is it different strategies?
Yeah, and we publish the books for fun and not for, a financial goal or
Right.
dream or anything. If it happens, that's fantastic. If it doesn't, that's okay too. But
Right.
is really we have about 200 between 250 and 300 sales globally since
Congratulations.
2000 as 2019. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say I think it's okay. It's, a slow process when
Yeah.
you're self-published. Um, I did send my manuscripts to 50 to 100 publishers and
Nice.
they all turned me down. So too bad that
Yeah.
they didn't
Yeah.
books, but
Yeah.
um yeah, it's been okay. And the I think the best thing that's really come out of them is being able to work with schools, being able to work with my children's school. And last year, since they were in person school, I had donated the whole collection to my daughter's second grade class,
Nice.
and they loved them. She came home and said they fight over the books, like they won't anybody a chance to read them.
I
So
love
they
it.
really and now think of the messages that these kids took into the next year with them.
Right.
Now they've learned about dyslexia, Down syndrome, autism, how to support people with physical differences.
Yeah.
So much like
Incredible.
valuable information because they can not only start supporting people, support themselves if
Right.
they have any of these, and then support their peers that also might be struggling. And through that, I mean, I really hope that, like you said, the idea of what autism looks like in the world, well, I hope that teachers find value in these books and
Yeah.
schools start putting them into classrooms and deciding these are the important lessons that we need to be teaching children how to create relationships and support one another, because tearing people down because you don't understand how they are,
Right.
that's not a bright future.
Right.
So
And even outside
I
of the
really hope
schools.
that
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
they can find the value.
No, I got you back. Okay, you broke up for a second. But what was that last line? I'm sorry.
Oh, I just said I hope, that I want schools to realize how much the power that the kids will gain through being able to support one another in these kinds of areas.
Absolutely. I even want it to happen outside of school because this is a little bit of over the cliff here. But, you also hear the stories of, police officers and how they've been handling autistic kids and individuals. And to me, all that spells out to me is they just don't understand, like you said, the autistic mind.
And where are you at? What state are you guys
I'm
in?
in Massachusetts.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm in Utah, and this is a sensitive subject, but back in September, a 13-year-old boy was shot, and his mother called and said, "I need or I need crisis intervention,"
Yeah.
and they didn't send it, unfortunately,
Oh my God.
and he was in a meltdown, and he was this, you know, with all due respect, scrawny little kid
Yeah.
who my husband took one look at and said, "Are you kidding me?
Right.
Like 2 or 3 dads could have gone out there and subdued this boy with no injury or harm done at
Absolutely.
all."
Yeah.
And that is why I had mentioned earlier that we run an autism support advocates group. That's why we started it,
Okay.
because we wanted to bring our community together in hopes that if there were times of crisis, we could, if need, lean on each other. Um, but through all of this, I actually did like a change.org petition and had, I don't know, I think it only had like 2,000 signatures, but it was
That's
good.
fantastic. Yeah.
Um, But also through that, one of our just kind of a person that I've met through all of this, she does autism training. And so now I have somebody in our group, in my community that I'm, friends with,
Yep.
that she goes in and she does police training for just all these local communities. She is a sibling. Her sister is 26 and she's 28, and she is her sister's guardian, and
Okay.
and her sister has autism. And so she just has all of this obviously valuable information and things too. And so I'm so lucky and excited to be teaming up with her to go into our local police stations and start training with them as well. So such a huge thing that needs to happen.
Yeah, I wish we had more. Or if it is happening, I haven't heard of it, but I wish it was happening more here. Although we haven't had some of the, we haven't had any of those stories recently close to by. But every time I see them on the news, it's heartbreaking, and it makes me think about my son. And to think that he could just be walking down the street, and a police officer, like you said, could just do damage to him for whatever ungodly reason. I don't know. I wanted to go back to where we were talking about the kids in the school, and naturally, I would like to bring up COVID and your thoughts on them being out of school. I don't know how it is in Utah. Here, we still are not full time in school, but the town 20 minutes up the road is in school. I don't understand why. But how's it going for you? What are your thoughts on that?
So, us personally, we are very non-traditional as a family.
Okay.
We don't have bed meal times. We're just like, I like to joke, we're like gypsies that own a house, We're like, we don't move around, but we don't follow rules either.
Yeah,
And we're but only because we've learned how to be flexible in our own life and it works for us, and that's okay.
absolutely.
Um, you know, Mom sleeps from 9 p.m. until 6 a.m. Everybody else stays up at different hours, but that's
That's,
okay.
yeah,
Um,
I love that. I
it's
do love that freedom of
still this weird normal person I get to be.
it.
um, yeah, I think that as soon as it happened, we brought our kids home, obviously, and then a week later the school shut down. So
Okay.
DJ's been homeschooled for 4 years now.
Okay.
Um, he struggled in school, not because he doesn't know how to, um, learn things, but because he knows too much.
Okay.
And in kindergarten he was doing algebra, and he
Wow.
was already like at like 10th grade English. He spoke like 5 languages. I shouldn't say spoke, he memorized 5 languages.
Incredible.
Language and knowing how to speak one are totally different things.
Yeah,
So
I
he
agree.
can share in blue and other things like that, but he can't actually have a conversation with anyone. um but yeah, he was so far ahead. They couldn't teach him. They didn't have teachers. They didn't make teachers available, which I think is a total disservice to him and a disservice to all the other brilliant children that will come, ahead of, or
I,
excuse me, behind him.
I agree.
But yeah. So I brought him home and, just went through homeschool, and found a really good online school to follow so that it wasn't like willy nilly, here's a book to read, but a real schedule to follow with good criteria that, so, and it's really good. The teacher that we were so lucky to get has two children also on the spectrum. So
Nice.
she completely gets it. And when I would say, hey, he's not going to write this paragraph out, but he'll type it. Is that okay? She's like, do whatever you need, like adapt whatever you need to adapt, whatever. And so this year, all of with my daughter coming home as well, we all kind of, his special education team being the we all decided that he didn't have to do school this year because he's like at 11th, it's like a 10th grade math, 11th or 12th grade English, and he's 11. He's really in 5th grade. Like he
Yeah,
can skip 5th grade. It
awesome.
just took a lot of pressure off us because we were just he was getting disinterested in the 5th grade math and yada yada. But
Yeah,
so that was really hard for him. But my daughter, on the other hand, like I said, she's flourishing at home. Like I don't want to send her back. I want to keep her home because they didn't support her the way she needed to be.
Mhm.
They were going to let her fall behind and not do anything about it and not care a care in the world. So how could I, with any, mental knowledge of that, put her back in that situation
Right.
where they don't care enough to have her, then they
No.
can't have her.
Yeah, yeah.
It's wonderful. So they're missing out. But, and her and I talk about it a lot, and about, well, you know, what we've decided is we've learned, we're always gaining more knowledge, and just learning new things about autism studies, just listening to podcasts like yourself, just doing all kinds of things. And the other day we were listening to, he's a doctor from England, and he wrote a book about patterns, like pattern thinking or something, and it
Sure.
had to do with how, people on the spectrum often, have there's like 5 types of brains, and these systematic pattern thinkers are usually autistic.
Yeah.
And when you look at that, and he tells how, like you said, they have this like micromanage this focus that is like needlepoint focus. Well, what we realized in that was, well, why should we make our kid then do like math, English, da 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 every single day, when they can give all of their focus in one subject and like get it, you know?
Absolutely.
And that's what we do now. We say, okay, what do you want to do today? Let's do all of our week's social studies. And we'll sit down. Today we did all of our weeks of reading. And, tomorrow or whatever, I think she has tomorrow off. But, we kind of, you can do them whatever time of day, whatever. It's just fantastic.
I believe
I
it. Sounds
love
like it.
it. But I understand, like, I'm unique in that way. Like, I love education, and I've been a preschool teacher, and not a school teacher, but I still have experience with kids, and patience, and
Yeah.
getting attention, and things like that. And so, with parents that have kids in multiple age groups and
Yeah.
grades, I can't imagine how
Yeah.
hard they must be struggling with this. And I give them props.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same time, maybe give yourselves a break. Like, kids are so resilient. They're not going to fall behind for a year for not learning everything they could have learned this year. Like, they're not life is going to still be treating them how it is, right? It's still like they're still going to move through life, but yeah. So I think that parents need to take a little bit of the pressure off themselves too that way.
Yeah, I give all praise to my wife. I mean, I still go to work at a 9 to 5, so I'm pretty much gone all day. But she's the one that's had to transition into not only working because she works from home, but also being, teacher, being mom, being wife, being everything across the board. So I give her all the props in the world. I think everybody's doing great. I have a teenager as well. But my 10-year-old, my daughter, I can tell, is just missing the social interaction. She's missing the buddies, she's missing the friends, and then now she can see them in like a little party chat in the school. So it makes it even worse because it's sort of like that I can see them but I can't actually hang out with them vibe. But as for my son with autism, I also think he's flourishing at home, and I think he's doing much better, and maybe not as extreme as you are doing it, but we're letting him focus on what he wants to focus on as well, and that seems to be more, he doesn't throw it, tantrums as he usually does, and boy is he hitting home runs on his writing and all that stuff. Still got to work on his speech though, his verbal stuff.
And it just takes time. It takes
It does,
time
yeah.
until you find kind of the right things that work for you. For us, right away, we found these videos called Rock and Learn, and it matches learning with music. And so right away, my kids just love that. He'll still listen to them. I still hear him in there. And it's like AB, it's like alphabet stuff, and he still loves it. He can speak. He knows like 25 languages that he's taught himself. He's taught himself like music composition he's
Yeah,
working on right now,
that's
and music
incredible.
theory. And yeah, the periodic table, he memorized that at like 4 or 5, I think. And so just these crazy feats. Yeah, he's teaching us every day, but he's cute. We got him a piano, and so he'll play like the T-Mobile jingle or the Nintendo, and he is just self-taught. You just down there, and then all of a sudden you hear it going on. You're like,
Yeah.
whoa.
How much do you let him YouTube? Do you let him YouTube a lot and kind of pick his own stuff, or?
Yeah, and I mean, I made a channel for both of them, and keep it unrestricted as much as I can,
Yeah.
but and that's all you can do is
Right.
like it's hard with this new age of internet because I kind of learned my stepdaughter's 21, and so I raised her for 15 years, and I saw the error of my ways, and like she's great, she's just a great person, but there was a lot that I tried to control,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of things that you don't realize, like when you're first parent, that you don't have to like live in these rigid traditions that maybe our parents did.
Right.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I got an example of that too. So I have an older teenager. I got 4 kids, by the way, but an older teenager from a previous relationship, and she's 17. So I think I was that quote unquote helicopter parent with her, right? She's my oldest. She's the first one. So I basically
So I
just
basically just
locked her down
locked her
in an
down
unconscious way. I didn't mean to do it, but it was kind of happening. And when COVID started, she kind of just said enough is enough, and she wanted to move with grandma. Now, being a male, being egotistical, I was like, it was a shot at me. It was like, oh, like you live here. Why would you want to live over there? And that was back in April of last year. But now I kind of see, like you said, the error of my ways. I kind of see that she was just being, I mean, kind of just held down, and she's flourishing and she's doing great. But I needed her, strangely enough, because usually as the parent that there's this type of teaching, I needed her to be strong, and I needed her to push me in that direction in order for me to understand that she knows what she's doing. I got to trust her more.
yep.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think that now I'm kind of trying to do that with my younger kids, and like
Yeah.
you said, that with YouTube and everything, just trying to be like, okay, if I hear something that he shouldn't, because he doesn't really have the insight that he's like being sneaky or trying to look up bad information.
Right.
The things that he runs across, unfortunately, it's because he runs across it,
Right.
and it's like odd things, but they're never. We haven't had any problems, so
It's not malicious or anything. It's the algorithm. Yeah.
exactly.
I'm with it. So if I don't know if this is a broad question, but where do you see the future of autism therapy or autism care? Where do you see this next level of awareness going?
I really hope that we can start to realize it's so hard to say because we don't know what's going to happen if things are going to go back into in person or stay online and things. um I hope that parents are getting as much help that they can online. I know that that's probably really hard,
Yeah.
and for the parents that are getting it in person, I mean, keep getting it, get as much support as you can. As I think that in my personal drive, or what my dream would be, is to someday start a foundation where we pay ABA therapists to go into schools. That we say, hey, school district, work with this nonprofit organization. We'll send these therapists in for your special needs classes or your gen ed classes that have a special needs student that just needs that extra help in their behavioral help. Because why not?
Right.
Why if we're going to give these kids what they need, why do we have to wait until after school hours? Like, why can't we have it all in one, an all inclusive like package for
I,
them,
I
right?
love that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And as far as again, me personally, like that's why, I'm doing these guests, being a guest on all these podcasts. And as you can see behind me, I
Yeah.
have this Yes Child Show. We haven't started it yet, but it's in the works, and it's going to be created to get the word out, to teach people, and to get the perspective change, to reorder, not disorder.
Love
Let's
that.
change ideas. And the more power and the more knowledge we give people, the less fear they're going to run off of, and the more power it's going to give everybody to just help
Yeah,
your community.
I agree. Now, so that's a podcast that's coming out behind you. That's what you're working on.
Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah.
SJ Child. Yeah,
Oh,
we're really excited. I mean, we haven't. I haven't recorded any episodes yet or anything. So, but
it's coming
we're
soon.
putting the content together and kind of figuring out. I'm learning a lot. Being a guest on
Yeah.
all these podcasts and stuff. So, it's been such a great experience, and I think that through this, I've realized not only am I a good storyteller in my books, but I'm a good storyteller virtually like this.
Love it. I agree.
And yeah, so this is why I had to, and there was a couple of earlier podcasts that I did early on that the people were like, Sarah, have you thought about this? Are you going to do your own show? And no, of course not. Why? Me, little old me. And then I was like, I
Yeah.
can do it. It's great. And, I have such, like you said, you're so supportive of your wife. My husband is like, he supports me. He goes on to Amazon and buys all my equipment, and then he's surprised, and he's so incredible. I mean, he made the wall hanging. It's just so
Awesome.
like,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's great because we're really working together, and he's the pattern thinker. He's the analytical, and so he's able to look at just so many things, where to place ads, or how to, what's a good time frame, like what are the best time frames for these kind of things. He's so incredible so I call him, he's my content manager. He's the
Nice.
producer.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I tell you what, right off the bat, my wife and I would be subscribers. Not only are we avid podcasters, but this is obviously a topic that's close to our heart. So that's going to be great to look forward to. So where can the listeners buy the books or find out more about you and follow along on this journey, learn about the podcast? Where can they go?
Thanks. You can go to our Facebook page, which is Facebook all the number 4 kids books. That'll be our SJ Child's Books page. You can go to our website at sjchildsbooks.com. And we have Instagram, SJ Child's Books. I think that we have an SJ Child show page as well on there. But like I said, it's still starter phase. So
Yeah.
not
Awesome.
too many posts. But yeah, getting,
Yeah.
just getting it running. It's so exciting, and it's scary, but it's exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be sure to put all that in the show notes. I'm sure you gave me most of those links in the form you filled out, whatever. So, Sarah, I appreciate your time. I appreciate what you do. I appreciate the education that you're putting forward, because I agree there's so many parents, including myself, that need to feel like there's somebody on their side and somebody who understands the journey. And you are that. It's been incredible talking to you. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome. Bye.
Thanks for joining me for another great conversation. This one, once again, guys, was near and dear to my heart. I love my son. I love how special he is. And if you don't know about autism or you're unaware, you should definitely look it up, because they're very, very special individuals. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this, please rate, share, and subscribe so I can continue to have the conversations I love to have, and you can continue to have the conversations you love to listen to. As always, guys, take care. Later.